Hey folks, it's time for the quote of the day. And we're going to have a little show and tell today as well. Just hang out for that for a minute. Today's quote is going to come to you from a man who, without a doubt, changed the world, for better and for worse. Now, as I've said before, whenever I quote somebody that's got kind of a questionable, background, he had some very kind of not great takes. But that being said, what he brought into the world is absolutely fantastic, and I mean that quite literally. Now, I think that one of the reasons why I wanted to quote him today is because a lot of times when I do my quote of the day videos, I'm quoting, philosophers and statesmen and politicians and uh, uh, you know, acclaimed actors and musicians and people that have wide acclaim that aren't very niche usually. Or they've had maybe their effect has been one that is felt, but a lot of people don't necessarily know their name. Today is one that is kind of right in the middle of all that, but he's really just somebody who followed his passion and created something that right now in the world is really honestly just kind of coming down from one of the most popular things on the planet. Today, we are celebrating the birthday of and quoting a man named Gary Gygax. Today is his birthday. Now, what did Gary Gygax do? If you don't know his name, he created the game Dungeons and Dragons, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons to be very exact. But this is a man who, with his coworker, partner, I don't know what you would call him, Dave Arneson, created one of the most polarizing games, perhaps of all time. Now, obviously, when we're talking about D&D, it's very important to get this out of the way. If you're somebody that has some sort of religious nonsense against it, well, fuck off. I can't do anything for you. I'm sorry. That's just stupid, and I mean, I'm not going to be kind to that kind of ignorance. Uh, there are, we still have like murmurs and ripples from the satanic panic of the fucking 80s, and I'm not going to indulge that. It's just fucking stupid. If people still think that way, that's on you, and I think less of you. Genuinely, I do. Now, that being said, like I said, today's a show and tell. So before we get too far into a quote or anything like that, I thought I would show exactly why I look down on people like that. I know it's going to be backwards for you guys, but what we have here is the sixth printing ever of the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook. This is one of my babies. This is something that I've had for years and years and years. Obviously, this was printed in 1980, so I was 5 years old when this was printed. Obviously, I didn't get it then. I got it when I was about, I'm going to say probably 12 or 13, and it's in pretty good shape. I don't know. I think it was a used when I got it, obviously, and I can show you that because the inside says Mike's book. So I don't know who Mike is, but I bought this from like a garage sale or something like that. And thanks, Mike. I owe you one, Mike. But I've held on to this book since then. I love this book. I love all D&D stuff. Something that I don't do as much as I would like. I haven't really actually run a game or played in many years now, but I collect all forms of role playing books, and this is obviously one of the big ones. Now you can see here at the bottom. Again, I know it's backwards, but you see here backwards it says Gary Gygax and TSR. That's the company, and this is the man that created basically the entire rules system for it. He once said, and I thought this was a funny quote, going back to the satanic panic thing. He once said that he had heard somebody had taken this book or a version of this book and thrown it into a fire, and the book screamed. And he laughed about it, and he was like, well, just so you know, all the magic and everything that's in that book is all fake, just like the gold is. He said you should try to retire on the gold and see what that does for you. So I thought that was funny. Now, like I said, there are some negative things about Gary Gygax that I want to touch on him because I think that they're important for me to mention. This is a man, and especially now, like now we have this big resurgence of D&D, like Wizards of the Coast owns it, and it's this big thing, and women and men everywhere play it, and that's wonderful. I think that it's great that it had this big surge, but it's important to know that Gary Gygax was, I mean, I wouldn't say that he was a misogynist, but he certainly felt as if gaming, like role playing especially, was not for women. He didn't see that any sort of gaming was for women. He thought the men were too competitive, and that any game that you had that had any sort of competition involved in it, and D&D is like dice rolling, so it's not even like really competitive, but he just saw it as like they just didn't fit in those worlds. and he's talked about it all the time. I can't remember the term that he used uh, for how he talked about it, but it was something that became, relatively well known about him. He was kind of he thought that women just weren't gamers, and that he I think that he actually said at one point in time, and this isn't obviously a direct quote, but he said something to the effect of, "No one has ever been able to design a game for women that women actually wanted to play, so they try to play men's games." And they fail at it, and then they make it worse for men, which I think was, first of all, a really fucking horrible take. But second of all, at no point in time, especially at that point in time when he was saying that, like in the 80s and probably like early 90s maybe, women weren't designing games. They just weren't. They weren't even allowed in the fucking space to design games. So how in the fuck are a bunch of nerds that know nothing about fucking women ever going to sit around a table and design a game for a woman and have it be successful? That's just not going to happen. You need to invite women into the room, and they were terrified of them. So that was never going to happen like that. And really, it wasn't until women decided that they wanted to be involved in gaming, like they wanted to do it. They thought that it was cool. They wanted to tell stories with their friends. They wanted to clickety clack the dice with the rest of the people. They wanted to play the card games. It wasn't until that happened that you started to see a shift in gaming, and women started to kind of impress their make their mark, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Make their mark on gaming, and it's been fantastic. I think it's wonderful. I never really understood why that was something that somebody that created D&D would say. Like, it's a role-playing game, and the idea is to take on a role, to be something that you're not. And I thought, well, you don't have to necessarily be something you're not, but to imagine that you're something in a game, and this is a powerful, wonderful thing that you can do in role-playing. So how is that not right in line with something that women would want to do, right? Like, I never understood. I've always had issue with it, and there are a few other issues with him. We're not going to touch on those because I think that most of them are relatively bubkiss and not really, they don't really have anything to do with anything. So uh, I think that it's just important to point out that he was absolutely wrong about that, and move past it, understand that he was a product of his times, and that sort of, like, I don't know, male superiority in gaming, I don't even know that's a fucking thing, but that kind of thinking is, should be thrown to the wayside if anybody still has that opinion. Now, as far as the quote goes, I do absolutely agree with this quote. I think that it's a wonderful way of putting it, especially when you think about the way that I imagine this quote came from a time when he was defending role playing, and I think that it's an important thing to understand. Gary Gygax once said, "As children, we all, in all cultures and societies, learn behavior from observation, imitation, and encouragement of various kinds. So by the suggestion made, we all pretend most of the time." And I think that this is important. I'm going to read it again. I want you to think about it for a second. I want you to think about how you behave just in general society, not even in gaming or anything like that, but just in general society. I want you to think about that while I'm saying this quote, or while I'm reading this quote. He said, "As children, we all, in different cultures and societies, learn behavior from observation, imitation, and encouragement of various kinds. So by the suggestion made, we all pretend most of the time." And I think this is very powerful, and I think that is something that a lot of people should think about. How much of the things that you've learned, how much of the things that you've been influenced by make it so that you kind of pretend to be that version of something that you're really not? Like, deep inside, you may not even agree with it, but you just do it because society and the people around you have told you this is the way. I think that when people really start to do that, a lot of times you end up going, wait a minute, I don't even like this. Why the fuck am I doing this? And you start to, kind of reconfigure who you are and what you value and how you show up in the world. And so I think that it's really important sometimes to stop and think about the fact that the person that you may be today, it probably isn't the person that you really are. And a lot of us just hide that shit underneath. A lot of us go through life role playing and don't even realize it until we're way into our fucking life. And then we have to kind of pull back and go, wait a minute, why have I been playing this role? Why have I been pretending to be this character? Why have I not been myself? And I think that coming from really the master of role playing, I think this is a very powerful concept. Happy birthday to Gary Gygax. And to the rest of you, please take care of yourself and take care of others. I will talk to you soon.